Hitting revenue targets is hard and requires constant hustle. Last quarter's success is already forgotten. Learn the mindset and tactics of today's most successful revenue producers in B2B marketing and sales. We call this the revenue hustle. I'm your host, Tom Hessen, navigating you on this journey. Today's show is sponsored by 9 Lenses, an interactive assessment platform that enables you to add instant value to your buyers and allows your sales team to tailor business conversations focused on the pain points each and every time. Check them out at 9lenses.com.
Hi, this is your host, Tom Hessen with the Revenue Hustle, and it is my distinct pleasure to welcome Madi Rawlins, the VP of Customer Success, to the podcast. Madi, welcome to the Revenue Hustle.
Thank you so much for having me. I love being here.
Yes, I'm so looking forward to our conversation. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Cyderes in the role of VP of Customer Success.
Easy. I love it. I love talking about that day in, day out. So 26-year career in IT, but I always like to say it's a 26-year career in customer success because really that's why we're doing this, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day. So I 26-year career in IT, 25 of that was actually spent at IBM in varying different roles. So a big portion of that has been in the cybersecurity space. So I left for a brief period this year to go to consulting firms to stand up their cybersecurity practice. And I actually just recently joined Cyderes. I'm really passionate about customer success and taking everything our customers say and packaging that into requirements that the business uses, whether across sales, marketing, services, et cetera. So that's really what I'm have joined Cyderes to do. I'm really excited about joining this.
Awesome. No, thank you for sharing that. And 25 years at one company, that's a long run. That's fantastic. And so I'm sure that'll come up. We'll have some good stories along the way here, but you know how we do this on the Revenue Hustle. We have these revenue rules. So go ahead and let her rip. What's your first revenue rule?
All right. My first revenue rule that I live, eat, sleep, and breathe by is you have to operationalize the customer voice.
Oh, that's awesome. Tell us more about that.
Okay. How I think of that is really that's going to be when you come into a company or when you're starting this and you think about operationalizing the customer voice, you really have to think about where that's important for your business. For us and how I'm implementing that now is really across 4 and maybe 5 pillars. So really operationalizing their voice across services, product, sales, marketing. And I even like to take that sliver and talk about HR and people, right? As we think about standing up a customer success organization and how do the people service our clients and how do we meet their needs. But really, if we just take it from that product layer, so operationalizing the customer voice on the product layer is, I think of it as bidirectional. So we are taking the customer's voice across however you ingest the customer voice, whether that is a proactive solicitation, whether it's NPS survey feedback, escalations, or just direct feedback from your customer success team, but really taking all of that voice, collecting it, and for lack of a better term, turning it into requirements that then you say to your product team, hey, product team, this is what our clients would like to see matured. This is their wish list of what they would like to have built. And so that's taking their voice and actually putting it into action, right? And having that materialize in a product, features that they want to see and or new products that they would like to see come to life.
And I love the word operationalize the customer voice, because I think what stands out to me is it's not just, hey, our customers' opinions matter. It's hard to operationalize that systematically, because again, if you think about the hundreds or thousands of conversations, emails, text messages that are happening every day with your customer success team, maybe customer support, maybe with an account manager or salesperson. So how do you operationalize that? Because I think everyone would say, yeah, totally understand the value of our customers, but it's not easy to corral all of that stuff, especially when you think about the different departments, services, product, sales, marketing, like that's all slightly packaged differently, I suspect, for each of those different pillars. So just talk about it, like operationalize, like how did you come to that? Like, I suspect there wasn't an operational element of it.
I think it started with, I think often people will say customer success is fluff, or that sounds fluff or fluffy. And I have to immediately go into, well, here's how it's not, right? Here are the actual work streams, which is the foundation of operationalizing something. Here are the work streams that we do, that we actually execute to take that voice. And so, and to me, that's how I've proven out. So for me, it sort of started with that trigger of, how do I have the conversation to show that it's actually not fluff, right? So I would say that we do that across people, process, and technology, and really focusing on that technology piece. I think we all live in that era, right? Everything's digital. We want to be able to scroll and see data and facts and obviously use a lot of that data to be able to gather insights. But you can really only do that if you take that voice and put it into some sort of technology, and you can actually harness that data. So for me, I like to take, if we take across the 4 ingestion app channels that I just talked about, if you used your customer success managers, right? We take their touch points with the client and we ingest them into a technology, whether that be escalation tracking, or it be sentiment tracking, or even meeting tracking. So, but that's done at a specific criteria set. So I think, to operationalize something, you would say, let's just, for ease of our discussion today, we're going to track these 10 criteria, right, for this client. And then all of our interactions will categorize it according to these 10 criteria. So then we start to collect volume, and most importantly, magnitude, right? So quickly, as you start to collect and aggregate that data, you start seeing things that bubble up, right? For the clients, you start getting like a top 3. This is where we have to either go stop the bleeding, or this is where we see that they really, really want a wish list or a new product. So for me, the technology is the biggest piece of that. Now, process would be the second, right? Because really you'd be orchestrating across many teams, right? You're getting ingestion of client voice across many teams. It's not just your customer success team. It could be across your delivery, your sales. So really making sure that you tee up a process across all of your business functions where you can ingest, there's a working process where they utilize that technology, and all of the ingestion actually happens to, and I don't like to use the word a centralized place, or I like to say more of just a predictive place, so that we know, okay, this is where the data is going to live and this is how we're going to use it. And then everyone who's part of that process stream knows that, right?
So
Yeah,
that's great. And so the 4 ingestion points you're talking about. So again, it's the customers, or your salespeople are talking to customers, marketers are talking to customers, whether that's through web interactions or chatbots or any number of things, right? Are you now essentially operationalizing this outside of the CS function? So maybe that's the easy place to start, because that's where you can control that people, process, technology. But it sounds like what you're saying is you're doing this almost as a service to the entire organization.
correct.
Right?
Yes. And I think a really good example of where you're saying operationalizing outside my organization, if you could think about all the touch points that you can actually gather from, say, a security operations portal, right? Where you can take sentiment, ticket ratings on sentiments, and you can say, hey, okay, let's just say you had a rating feature on your ticketing platform, and a customer could say, I rate this 1 out of 5 or 5 out of 5, this
Right.
ticket interaction with you. And then you can take ticket sentiment, or you can take chat sentiment. So all of those, those data points that you could capture just from a delivery or a support organization, that we can then aggregate and pull into that would be a perfect example of where you say, okay, we're going to capture across our entire customer journey, wherever we're touching our clients, like how do we capture that sentiment and pull it into, our data source.
Well, yeah, and it makes complete sense. I am surprised, or I'm curious to know, how can you get those other functions on board, right? Like, are you having like a mandate from, let's call it maybe a chief revenue officer that has marketing, sales, and CS, so that may at least drive alignment across the customer journey? Or have you ever found any pushback to say, why are you talking to my salespeople, or whatever it may be, just organizationally, because it it's coming out of the customer success. And this is just more of a, corporate dynamics,
Yeah.
things that you may or may not have ever encountered as a result of.
No, I've seen it. I've worked in a lot of different organizations. So even though I did spend 25 years at one company, I felt like each of the business units that I worked in did have its own ecosystem or culture, if you will. So I would say, to your point, customer success has to be a foundational value of the company that you work in, right? And if it's not, I think you're always going to come up against that resistance, because if we think about the sales function, I mean, it's very revenue focused, right? And you kind of like, and then if you think about even delivery, right? They're very, execute
Right.
focused. And so, if it's not a part of the culture, then I think customer success could be seen as a road bump, if you will, or a speed bump into them getting their goals. So I really do think, and that's why I was really excited to come on to a company where the CEO did value customer success at its core and realize that it does need to be part of what I like to call the fabric of how we operate. So at Cyderes, our motto is security, it's what we do. And then, I kind of have modified that from the customer success perspective of, our customers are at the heart of what we do, right? And so that should be motivated across all of our pillars. But I do agree with you. It's a cultural, it has to be woven into the culture. And if not, you're definitely gonna come
Right
up
into some
against roadblocks. Well, you're keeping me from this renewal, or you're slowing down the process, or me in just giving you that data point, right, slows me down from that. So yeah, I've definitely come up against that, and it's much more helpful if you have leadership at the top line,
right.
bought in to the value.
So talk a little bit about like when you have this data, like some of the decisions or things you've seen, or some stories just as a result of having the, you get the people, processes, and technology in place to ingest it, right? How do you then make decisions using that? What are some of the things that you are, packaging up for sales? You kind of mentioned like roadmap for features and functions for product. Like how do you then take, because there's a lot of good data being collected that just sits there and collects dust, right? So how do you then inject it into people's, that they see it and can act on it?
I think a couple great use cases that I've seen across at least 3 different organizations where I've been the leader for this function would be, if you think of business intelligence or analytics reporting, like for lack of for an easy term, just reporting. Very often, I think we would decide as a client, you're like, if you're on that analytics or business reporting team, you go, this is what they want to see. This is what they want to see. And we're building these dashboards, and this is, and so they have prescriptively, these reporting and business intelligence and analytics teams have a roadmap of, these are the views and the reporting that we're going to be building. And where I've come in and we, take this discovery time, I always take at least like 6 to 8 weeks to go literally just full court press, have a bunch of client meetings where we say, what do you want to see? What metrics are valuable to you? There has always, in all 3 of those that I've executed in those organizations, there's always been at least a 50-50 discrepancy, right? Where we were able to take what was in our roadmap and say, half of that doesn't matter to our clients. So if we think about that, if they would have just executed those reporting or intelligence roadmaps according to what we thought the client wanted to see, the client at the end would have thought 50% of that is not valuable.
Right.
And so now what those teams are working on is 100% valuable to our clients. And so I think that's a beautiful use case of where you say, oh, wow, the operationalization of that has an amazing outcome.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great example, because product, again, in big organizations, there's a lot of silos and not everyone gets to talk to the customer, right? So there's a lot of projections as to what the customer is, how they think, what they care about. And that's why, customer success is so valuable, because you're the actual interface, right, with the live humans that we call customers. And so being able to, and you hear, we're kind of in a space where we're collecting a lot of data from people, and in terms of like these sales assessment tools and platforms that we're building, there's a lot of anecdotal data that gets to executives, right? That they say like, oh, one senior person tells another senior person this one story, and all of a sudden that becomes the theme for every story that they tell, right? I mean, have you seen that sort of stuff where it's maybe well-intentioned, but it may not be accurate because, like, again, if it's not operationalized, you're not seeing it over and over and over again, or, you don't have a lot of data to back up that one story, right? So like, what's the opposite side of the whisper, the grapevine sort of stories that we hear that make their way back through the organization?
Well, it's interesting, right? So to one of those points that you just said, I think our function, to your point of a lot of our teams don't have that interaction with the clients, and while sales do, I think I've heard a lot of discussions about whether customer success lives in delivery and lives in sales. And for me, I like it to be independent, because I think while sales is very client facing, we can actually increase, their velocity to revenue, especially if we operationalize that voice. What I like to say is, we deliver you a customer view package, right? Where you can be, you can have just almost like a digest, if you will, walking into that client, let's say Acme X, where you say, hey, here's every touch point you had with that client. Here's their red, yellow, green. Here's some of their pain points. Here's what their service looks like, all of that. So we can actually increase the velocity and for me, make it easier for each of those functions to execute, because we are packaging that customer voice so neatly for them. But I think I went on a tangent, didn't answer your question. Did I, or do you want to?
No, you're good.
Again?
Yeah. I mean, I think what's also interesting is the process by which you implement this, right? So you've done this several times, right? You've kind of got your own playbook, right? You said technology is the biggest part, maybe, and then you said process, and then people. What are some things that you would advise others that would want to operationalize customer voice, when they think about, okay, how do I handle the tech stack? How do I implement a process and get people to buy in? Or just what are some of the things that you would coach others when they think about this?
One of the biggest hurdles to operationalizing that I've seen is that, I enter every organization having to live with the technology decisions that organization has made, and then re-architect for the future. And I think, my motto there is to really start with a little bit of tech rationalization, right? Look at what the strategic tools are. And if there are none, let's have a broader conversation with the leaders in the org that says, okay, what are our strategic tools? And then let's build on those. And so that as you're creating data sets, a really good example, obviously Salesforce is very used by sales. So that's a nice jumping point, right? So if you have Salesforce, if you make a decision that says, okay, Salesforce is going to be our center of gravity, and everything that we build will integrate off that. But really thinking about a strong technology strategy, and then rationalize it down so that you're not having your CS organization have to connect to a different tool from your marketing, from the sales, et cetera. It just makes it very difficult to stitch the threads that we talked about. So that would be my biggest kind of landmine that I would advise others to start with first, because if you can't set on strategic tools and then kind of architect, for that tool, for instance, you wouldn't want to, have workflows and all of this built in Salesforce. If you're going to strategically migrate to another tool, it just causes a lot of rework, and you're not going to realize that value.
So, and what are some of those core systems? So obviously your CRM, you mentioned, there's now kind of customer success platforms like Gainsight, and so where do you tend to see, now there's like software that records every call, so how do you, it may look different from organization to organization, but like what are some of the core pieces of tech that enable this?
Yeah, I think it really kind of depends on the maturity and the size of your organization, right? And some of these technologies that we're talking about are very expensive, and I think you only need to reach that clip level when you're of a certain size, et cetera.
Right.
So I think it's right fit technology too, but CRM for sure. And I think it has to, I like to look at everything from the customer journey perspective. So make sure that we're having, those technology decisions stitch all the way from a lead generation, all the way from renewal and expansion. And then I think often overlooked is that communication of value piece. Like, how are we automating those touch points? How are we making sure that the value that we're providing as a company is actually getting communicated out, and making sure those. So yes, CRM, but I've seen sometimes the marketing piece of that isn't very well integrated.
Right.
I mean, the sales and the delivery tends to be more integrated, and then that marketing kind of falls out. So really, I think it's orchestration, right? And making sure, like, let's look at all the functions that need to come together for this picture,
Right.
and make sure that our technology stitches those together.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a project in and of itself, right?
I know.
Just
It's a full-time job.
yeah. No kidding. No, I'm sure. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Well, great. Well, that is something we could talk a lot about, because I just know customer voice grounds everything, right? A lot of decisions come back to, like, what do our customers want? What do they think? Everything kind of should be centered around what's best for our customers. And that's oftentimes hard to answer, right? For a lot of different firms and functions inside of them that are all plotting the next campaign, to the next sales playbook, to the the QBRs that you're probably doing in customer success. And there's just a lot of different things that tap into that insight. So that's a great one. We have not talked about that. So I was really excited to hear more about that. So let's transition. What is your second revenue rule?
My second revenue rule that I live by is that renewals is a long game.
Tell me more.
Okay. I think often, what I've seen in my, 26-year career is that we say, oh, renewals up in 30 days. Let's go touch this client. And very often, there's a lack of really looking, hey, if this has been a 3-year contract, 2-year contract, even a 1-year contract, not keeping a pulse on that value creates a really tough conversation with the client if we don't care and feed that relationship. And so for me, I like to think of, renewal, the chance of that renewal happens from the day the contract signs every single day of delivery. So renewals is not just, getting that renewal revenue is not just a sales game, right? It really heavily relies on everything that happens in between, which is, delivery.
Yeah.
And then of course that the touch from CS, if you do have CS, customer success.
And I mean, in a SaaS company myself, obviously we'd never want to put too much emphasis or hero work at the time of renewal, right? Now, every customer situations can be different, and sometimes there's things that happen inside of customers that you can't control, like your sponsor leaves the company and now the new sponsor cares about other things, right? Just whatever that may be. But outside of those situations, like, why is this hard, right? Why is this not just second nature for every company to be like, we need to, be on top of this every single day to make sure they're getting value? Because it's obvious, but it's hard. And I'm just kind of curious, because I don't run CS, and I'm curious, just from your perspective, why that may be.
From what I've seen, really there's a lack of focus on mapping out the entire customer journey. So, I think one of the biggest conversations that we talk about just collectively in LinkedIn and in the business space is operating in silos. And that's, I think, exactly at the heart of this problem, right? Is the business analytics team does this, right? And the delivery team does that, and everybody's just, in charge of executing like their own silo. And then no one's really mapping that entire customer journey. And really, I think I like to call them moments that matter, and really saying, okay, across this journey, like, let's not be nuts. Like, we know we can't touch them every minute of every day. But like, what are those moments in their journey with us that actually matter? And those are different for every single company, right? So the moments that matter for, Amazon, it's not the same moment that matters for an Apple customer. But so I think that's what's missing from where I've seen and there have not been a lot of, there's not been a lot that I've seen where that is looked at collectively.
Right.
And when you define those moments that matter, really expanding that out and say, okay, this is a moment that matters for our client, and how are we going to make that experience magical and really just sleek and perfect. And I don't see that that's done at a really wide level.
Yeah, because I think it's an interesting point, because who owns the customer journey, right? And that's to your point before, like delivery owns a piece, sales owns a piece, customer success owns a piece, but no, who owns the entire thing to ensure that, right? And it just, it's the way we organize, but it's and I think what's just apparent in the 30 minutes we've spoken, like, you have no problem taking the customer's perspective and sharing that across your other functions, right? Your peers, right? You're not just inside of customer success. Like, this is what the customer wants and needs. So don't tell me about sales can't do this or can do that. Like, you're championing that across the entire organization in both revenue rules that you've talked about.
Yeah. And I think, to give a really good example, if we think about customer enablement after they get onboarded. So let's say we'd even take an iPhone. You bought an iPhone. If it's somebody that doesn't even know how to use an iPhone, how are we teaching them that enablement piece? And is that the execution of doing that enablement, is that actually a customer success function? No, right? Like, that's a learning and development, or maybe even a delivery function for them to create that. But really having the buck stop with me, who owns the customer journey, and calling out like, hey, this is an actual moment that matters for this Apple iPhone client. We need them to enable to use this technology, or enable them to use that portal, or all of those. But having that owner for that customer journey, and realizing that like that, next sale of that iPhone, which I'm going to call as the renewal, is part of that long game, making sure that moment that matters is excellent. Having somebody responsible to at least say, hey, this is something that your team needs to work on. I think we don't have to break up the silos, but if we can put that layer on top that says, hey, silo, I need you to work on, the enablement, a piece of this, technology that they just bought. Yeah. I mean, I think you're increasing the chance of success that you're going to get that sale, right?
And it seems like you've taken that upon yourself to kind of connect that through the lens of the customer journey. Like, so you're like, hey, silo, I need your help here, and silo here, I need your help. And so even though you're working with your other functions, right, but you're kind of taking a leading role. And is that just something that you care about, or do you think as the role of the customer success, that's just part of the mission? Or maybe both.
It's part of my first rule. So what I just said to you about that one little pain point of the client, right, where they don't know how to use that technology that they bought, that's a voice, right? And I say, okay, that is a product. Like, that is a product issue, or you could even say it's service. It depends on your company. Let's just say it's a product issue. So then you say, as part of the requirements package, that we're as part of that operationalization layer, right? Where we say, okay, voice, we heard that now becomes part of the requirement as part of whatever technology. Hey, by the way, we're hearing 300 clients said that they don't know how to use these phones. So this now becomes magnitude, now becomes, first order of business for us to solve in this moment,
I see. So your unifying function really is that customer voice, right? So like, you can now go, and you're not just saying, hey, I think this is a great idea. You're saying, we have data around the customer's voice or needs that we've packaged up in these ways, and therefore I need you to do this, I need you to do that, I need your help here, right? It's because it's all based on the data, and it's all coming straight from the customer. Is that a fair representation? It's just not you walking and knocking on doors and
Completely fair. And I think what it's an important call out here too is that I'm not, while I do think it's foundational and critical that the customer voice motivate everything that that we do, I don't want to do that. I'm not saying that that is our innovation engine, right? I think there's extreme value in having, you know, a CTO and that innovation engine. But what I think is the valuable piece is doing that delta comparison or that match. Like, hey, is this thing that we're creating, are we way off base? Are we oriented?
Right.
Will they find value? Has this a big question that I always ask my clients is what's on your wish list? And to me, it's, you know, as we start to kind of compare what we're building, we have a good, you know, we're always orienting to the client voice.
yeah, no, that's because you're right, because you know, if you ask customers what they want, they would say they want, you know, well, what's the famous saying? Like they wouldn't ask for a an automobile, they would ask for like more horses, right, to pull
Yeah.
their buggy, right?
Totally.
So it's like that you kind of have to, it goes both ways, because you have to take what the customer's saying, but sometimes you have to translate that into what are they really saying, or
Right.
what is the real problem behind the thing that they're asking for.
Right.
No, that's great. So no, this is great. I mean, I think it's you know, I've talked to a lot of CS executives, and I think, you know, the way that you champion the voice to drive alignment is really unique. And using obviously data, it's not just, hey, this is a good idea from Madi. This is coming straight from our customers, right? And it's harder, I suspect, to you know, everyone's got priorities, but you know, you've got to get it on someone's radar, right? If it's like you said, the magnitude and the volume of the problem, and the revenue impact and all that kind of stuff. So it should make decision making easier across the organization once you've kind of got that alignment.
That's what you said is just completely key. I say that to every new organization that I come in as leaders, because I think you just said that, you know, we can kind of be seen as a roadblock. And I really do say, I am here to make your decision process it so easy. So you can say, oh, a client doesn't care about that. Great. Move it off. Everybody has too much on their plate, right? So I said, I'm here to let you know what you can move off, right?
That's great. So how did you get into customer success?
Gosh, I mean, I think just naturally, if you look at my personality, I'm just a human-centric person, right? So even as I think about what makes me tick as a leader, and as I've grown my career, for me, it's about changing, touching lives, affording other opportunities. So I just am a very human-centric person. And I always say this to my team, like if I have a customer that's unhappy, I actually take it personally, like I can't sleep at night. And so as I've gone through my technical career, and I've been a lot of different functions, project manager, I led SSR teams that did like mainframe maintenance in data centers. But really, no matter what I was delivering, for me, I always just gravitated to like, what is just going to make you so happy? What's just going to make you tick? But I do that in the way I personally just give gifts, or like the things that make me happy, or just like those huge reactions from people. So I think I just think me, Madi, as a person was just naturally oriented that way. But I really too am a fixer, right? So if there are, while I love hearing glowing feedback from clients, when I hear pain points, I just naturally a solutioner, and I love bringing together the best and the brightest to say, okay, how do we fix that for them? So in any of my in my roles, I've just naturally gravitated to how do we delight this person
like that.
through either our solutions, technologies, etc. So that's how I landed here.
Awesome. No, that's great. So where can we follow you online?
You can follow me. I mean, I am just on LinkedIn all the time, right? So I think LinkedIn is the best place. That would be I don't really keep a Twitter or an Instagram or anything like that. So LinkedIn is really the best place. I try to post there daily. I check it all the time, and I would love to interact. I love to get in these kind of discussions, and
Awesome.
yeah, so LinkedIn's the best place.
Fantastic. Well, Madi, thank you for coming on to the Revenue Hustle. This was a
Aw.
great conversation, and let's do it again soon.
Will, great. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you,
Take care.
everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to The Revenue Hustle. This episode has been brought to you by 9 Lenses. Close more deals with interactive assessments. Check them out at 9lenses.com. See you next time.